Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. So today I'm gonna build what I like to call a cube table. Reason being is a 36 by 36 square by 36 inches tall, so I guess that's a cube. So far what I've been doing is cutting plywood to the right width. Now one of the disclaimers that I want to give is I'm sure there's better ways to build this table, but this was the way that I thought it was best, and so I'll try to explain the best that I can. Track saws are the best tool that you can get to cut plywood, in my opinion. It's just so nice. Maybe not the best, but it's a nice thing to have. Anyway, so I continue to cut the plywood. The client wanted an affordable solution, and so I offered to do plywood, maple plywood in this case, for the base, and a solid maple top for the top. And so right now you see me, I'm laminating 2 pieces of plywood to create the 1.5 inch thickness. And so right here I've sandwiched 4 of them, so I only do 1 glue up. This worked well. I used as many clamps as I could on the edges so that the edges were nice and tight. But I used the truss to get 1 edge square to 2 edges square. I'm still leaving things oversized here, and you'll realize why later on. So throughout this project I left things a little bit oversized to allow me to cut them to the appropriate length. So here's what I was talking about earlier. The way that I decided to create the base was basically creating 2 T's that I will sandwich together. Now Bourbon Moth, he just posted a video of a table that looks very similar to this, and the way that he did it was super smart. So I wish I would have thought about that. I didn't. I'll leave a link in the description so you can go watch his video. But anyway, this way for me it was very easy to set up, very easy to build, and very strong. So what you see is I have the laminated pieces in a longer piece, and I'm just screwing through the back. So I countersink those holes so they're flush with the back. And so I created 2 T's. You can see one in the background, and I'm creating the other one. And basically what I did after that is I used glue to put them both together, and that's what created the cross or the X, however you want to call it. Now I'm using plenty of glue, I'm using plenty of clamps to keep things square and not having to cut too much of it, but it ended up looking very nice in my opinion. So here's where I started to cut things to the final length for the plywood. So I use my track saw to basically have all legs be the same width from center. So this is maple so that I can cap the edges of the plywood. Here I'm cutting things to a smaller width for the 1.5 inches. I think I had these are 2.5 inch face frames for maple, so I cut them to a little bit over 1.5 inches. So I use clamps to get all of the faces, I guess, or all the trim pieces, and then I clamp them all. I mark them all together so they're spaced equally, and I drilled 3/8 holes. Now I learned this trick from Modern Builds. YouTuber. I'm sure you've probably seen him. If you haven't, again, I'll leave a link. But he uses a Craig jig drill bit because it gives you a perfect 3/8 holes for dowels. So that's what I use. You can kind of see what I'm doing here. So instead of trying to hide the screws, or instead of trying to make it disappear, I accentuated the dowels. So I used plenty of glue, and then I used, I think, 2-inch screws, maybe inch and 5/8. So here's where I'm adding the glue and the dowels that will cap those holes. Alright, then I went ahead and I started to flush cut things. Now I didn't have a really good way to hold this, so and by the way, my saw is super dull. I need to get a new blade, but after a while it cut the excess. I went ahead and I moved to work on the top, 36 by 36 top, and so I used the joiner and the plater to get things to the same dimensions with square edges, and then also going to the table saw to get a nice square edge. I like to cut pieces to be as equal as possible so that the top looks good, and then I rearrange everything. This top had a cool like dark and light almost pattern, and then I'm using dominoes just for alignment mainly. They add a little bit of strength, but the biggest reason is so that the pieces, once they're glued, the sanding is pretty easy, just to hit it with 80 grit, 120 grit, and then 220 grit to flatten things and keep things pretty flat. So I did one big glue up here. Again, the dominoes help with alignment, help things well. I use a roller to spread the glue because I think it's really fast and it allows a nice even layer of glue. So once the table was glued up, I went ahead and used my track saw to cut it to length, making sure that the track didn't move as much. Using a flush trim bit to cut the trim flush with the plywood. And sanding, you probably know what that is like. Alright, after the base or the table itself was completed, I went on to move to the stools. I was really nervous about this because it was all miter edges and it was interesting. So the trick here was to batch everything, so I planned as much as I could to only move the fence as little as I needed to and cut everything in in one go. In fact, I think I cut 3 or 4 extra pieces just to have, just in case. Now this might be overkill, but in my experience, you always mess up. In fact, I think I messed up on a couple pieces, and having the extras was a lifesaver. So again, I'm using a feather board to keep things square to and tight against the fence. And then once I had all my side cuts, I went ahead and I cut the tops and bottoms. Now this might be controversial for some of you, but again, I just thought it was the best way for me, the easiest way to batch out this table. I'm using pocket holes to assemble the stools. Now the glue joint between the sides is going to be plenty strong. I just needed a way to also attach the bottom and the top of the stools. Now this will make sense in a second here. I'll let the time lapse run here, and you can see in the background I had already built one just to learn before I record it. But basically I'm using the top and the bottom as guides. Instead of having to need clamps, I'm using the pocket holes to help me clamp the pieces in place. And this worked out pretty well. There was a couple of times I had to use a clamp, but I mean, it was a very nice way to assemble such a big piece. And then I put a clamp in the middle just to kind of give her some strength there, since there was no pressure applied there. But here I'm adding adjustable feet to the base, and I added adjustable feet to everything. You can see all 4 here, and I'm adding weathered oak stain. The client wanted the maple lightness, but also they wanted a hint of gray, so weathered oak gives it that nice hint of gray. And then for finish, I'm using polyurethane, just oil base. I spray about 4 coats, I believe, maybe 5 on the top, but I'm using just I think it's a Wagner sprayer, which works great. Now I'm not wearing a respirator because my mask actually broke, but I do recommend wear one because this thing is not very good for your lungs. Alright, so here I'm moving to the cushion part of the seats. This is my first time doing upholstery, so I probably won't have much to tell you about it, but I'll let it run so you can kind of see what I did. So I basically inset the top about 1/2 inch so that I can create the cushions that will sit inside that pocket, and you can see that right here. And then I went ahead and I used a round bit to get all sides of those plates basically. And I'm using 3/4 inch because that's what I have on hand, but I'm sure 1/2 inch would work too. Anyway, my thought on this was allow the fabric to rest against something that is round and not sharp. I don't know if that logic makes any sense, but that's why I did the round over in all 4 plates. That's what we're gonna call it, plates. And then here I went ahead and I cut the foam. I'm using 2-inch foam, and then cut the fabric. I didn't have the right tools for this, but basically what I did is I cut about 4 inches extra of fabric, and then using my pneumatic stapler, I think I have 5/8 staples, I started pulling the fabric as even as I could. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't perfectly even, but there was a couple times where I just kept pulling and checking, and it was a slow process, again, first time doing it. And then at the end I just cut the excess fabric and put staples all around the perimeter to secure the fabric. To attach the top to the base, I use the Z clips, and that's basically the project. So as always, towards the end I was ready just to deliver the project, so I didn't take much video about it, but here's some pictures. So thank you guys for watching. This table was real nice. The client was very happy with the modern look and although the upholstery wasn't perfect, again, they liked it. They liked it. So anyway, with that said, I'll see you guys on the next one. Thank you for watching, and you know what to do. Like, subscribe, do whatever you want. Anyway, bye bye, y'all. Pura Vida.